Hello, I'm Shalashuska, and this is Space Tyrant. Now, you may be wondering, Shalashuska, what is Space Tyrant? Well, I'm really glad you asked, Internet. Space Tyrant is, according to the game's website, a roguelike light 5X game set in a grimdark future of eternal war. Now, about half of that statement is true. It's certainly not grimdark, that's obviously very tongue-in-cheek, but it does try and act like a roguelite 4X game. I'm not sure why they necessarily call it a 5X game, but it certainly has a lot of elements of 4X. This is a very quick first impressions of the game that it just went up on early access about a week ago, but I first played it back in December, where I signed up for the open beta, and I actually wrote a first impressions piece of the beta back then. I'm going to put a link of the article in question in the description of the video below, so check it out if you're curious. And I just want to know what's changed from the beta to the current early access period. So it just opened up a new game. As you can see, I lost my campaign last game, or I quit out of it rather. So what happens is, when you start a new game, you can pick a faction, and each faction has different abilities. They have different cards in their hand, they play up different strengths, and that sort of affects how you go about conquering the galaxy. Now in here, rather than in a typical 4X where you play as, you know, just any old faction, here you sort of play as the bad guys. You're trying to become a Space Tyrant, and between you and the independent systems and the Galactic Senate, which is what you want to conquer, your objective is just to basically lay waste before everything ahead of you, which is fine. It removes a lot of the depth of diplomacy and strategy. There is no diplomacy in this game to speak of, not really. It's all about war in the grimdark future of whatever millennium this takes place in. There is only war. So you can see here, this is the hero that I'm going to be commanding, and this is where some of the roguelike elements come in, and you can swap out items. Now, you get items as you play through the game, and they give you, obviously, different abilities and some different bonuses as you start a new campaign, and that comes into effect as to how you want to approach whatever map. You can tune your strategy a little bit here, but ultimately, it comes down to what I find is a very simplistic combat's focus on what your fleet makeup is and what cards you have in your hand, and I'll explain that mechanic in a minute, right as soon as we start the game up. So back when I did the early impressions of the beta, I was actually really positive on the game. I never thought it would appeal to hardcore 4X fans, but there's certainly a space in the market for a more casual oriented person, either somebody who doesn't know 4X and kind of wants to wet their feet in the genre a little bit with something simple, or people who love 4X but they don't necessarily have like the hours to dedicate to an ongoing 4X game, and they want like a quick jolt. I liken this to sort of game you play on your lunch break, just because of how bite-sized it is, and I think that's a really good thing. So some of the screens should look familiar if you're a 4X fan. You got your basic income, you got your research points. There is research in the game, but there is no tech tree. Instead, you gather research points once you make a breakthrough. Once you hit the threshold, you pick an upgrade, and they're very basic things like 15% to attack of a particular ship kind, extra bonuses to particular ships, and everything is done through movement on this grid. So you can see I've selected my fleet, and you can see that's this hero right here, and I can move him to any of these quadrants. You move in, you conquer a planet, you get the resources. It's very straightforward. So let's go here because they'll give me gold. And we're going to go into the combat screen. So I'm going to open up combat here. And what they changed from the beta to now the early access version of the game is you now have tactics. And these are abilities that can be activated anytime during the battle, but you can only activate them once. And they're essentially there to help try and turn the tide of a fight naturally. So you have a set pool that the game will randomly generate for you. So here I can either do 50% damage to a single ship, I can max out my energy meter, I can remove all effects from friendly ships. So let's do power up. I'm going to play that right away, and I'm going to immediately launch a meteor strike. And I'm going to volley. And so what happens is you can see my ships, they have these special abilities. Slow down combat a little bit. They'll automatically fire, but then as you gain energy over here, you can expend that energy on your ships in order to do stuff like regenerate that ship's health or fire a meteor because this particular commander has the meteor strike ability. And that way they sort of keep combat slightly engaging while not necessarily being as engaging as a typical 4X game would be. It's not exactly hands-off. It's not like you sit back and just kind of like watch what happens and it's all up to random dice rolls, but instead you could influence it a little bit, and I kind of really like that system. Once you clear off a fleet, you can then invade a planet, and it's basically a dice roll. You have to knock down the number of health the planet has. See, I did 4 damage. I've now conquered it. So it gets added to my dice pool. I can explore the planet, and I sometimes get an event like this. And in this case, we're going to hack the planet, because it's going to add a power, but this is doomed anyway. And what does that mean? Well, it's a doomed planet. That means in 7 turns, it's going to explode, and I'm going to lose that bonus to my pool. But it is ultra rich, so that's nice. And if I loot it, I'll permanently damage the planet for 200 credits. Well, it's going to blow up anyway, so let's take those credits. And, yeah. Well, there it is. But I almost have enough to purchase another fleet. And then that's basically it. And the only other thing left is you get cards. And so what these do, these crystals in the bottom corner here, they're mana. Essentially what happens is you expend them to play a card as much mana as you have per turn. That regenerates at the beginning of every turn. So if I do this, I'll have 4 research, and I've gained 4 research. So in a few more turns, it's not really going to affect how fast I'm going to get my breakthrough, my next tech, but I'm nevertheless going to add to my pool. And as you can see, I've expended a mana, or a crystal, whatever, I'm calling it mana, because that's what it reminds me of. And I can't play this card. The last mechanic that you need to be aware of is this over here. So, every time you conquer a planet, this bar will increase. And this represents the grip of fear you have on the galaxy. But also, every turn it's going to decrease by a set amount. And I'm sorry, I keep moving my mouse over because I want to point to the unrest, but then doing so drops the pop-up. But it's going to drop every turn. And in order to keep your momentum going, you have to keep conquering planets. So it encourages you to play very aggressively and to not turtle, which really, it's not a strategy you can win on anyway. Even if they remove this mechanic entirely, there's no point, because very rarely will the enemy AI move in on your planets. They'll do so once they have a few fleets massed up and it's not defended. But nonetheless, it's a good way to kind of encourage you to keep going and prevent games from taking too long. So I see it as a sort of mechanism to keep things moving forward and to keep that sort of fast-paced gameplay in mind, which is what they advertise. Once you get a certain amount of Tyranny, you can actually fire a Death Ray. And you can destroy 1 to 3 ships in the fleet. It will cost you Tyranny and it will drop your bar, but it's really great if you want to move on and quickly bunny hop to a chain of planets and, you know, wipe out a fleet. That may actually be a problem for you. So you can see my Tyranny drop there. We're going to hire another fleet. So you can see this fleet. Let's move them to the shipyard over here. So as you kind of saw with combat, ships are laid out on a grid. And they take up different slots. So you see that carrier, it costs 60 gold, and it's a 2x2. Or 1x2 rather. There are larger ships that are 2x2 that take up like 4 squares on the grid. And as you gain experience and your leaders gain levels and they don't learn new powers, but the grid actually expands, so you can carry a larger fleet and have more combat options. Let's get a destroyer there. And you can see this hero, actually, let's go back to, I wonder, does it show? Yeah, so this one, the other hero has the meteor strike, which lets me do damage to the enemy fleet. This one will deflect 40% of all incoming fire for the next 15 seconds. Which is fine, but let's take him here, because that's going to be slightly easier to conquer. And so that's pretty much everything the game has to offer. You'll keep going until you hit the mission objectives. Once you do that, you will gain loot based on random factors. You can pick up loot through events. You'll get loot for winning maps, and then you keep going until you manage to win all the maps that you have on that main title screen. And then that finishes the campaign. So naturally, the missions get harder the further you go along, with increasing difficulty, more systems, more aggressive AI. I haven't finished a campaign yet, but you can see the shield there reducing power. Let's move it to normal speed, actually, because that's a bit too slow. But I like the fact that it offers a bunch of replayability with the randomly generated maps, procedurally generated maps, and the fact that you can just kind of replay campaigns for new loot and what have you. And I don't think that it's wrong to necessarily have a game like this where it's fast-paced, it's not meant to be overly complex, and it has enough content on offer to make it worth your time to play, I feel. And that's about it. There's not much else. So you get a new card on every turn, but before we go, let's fire the death ray so you can see what that looks like. You look like a lovely fleet. I like that sound effect. And boom. Wonderful. That's wonderful. So anyway, that is Space Tyrant. I like it. I actually like it quite a bit. You can get it on Steam for, I believe it's 22 Canadian dollars in early access. The Steam page says that they don't think that they're going to increase the price, so it's not like get it now before it becomes more expensive. And with what you get, I think that that's a fair price. You can't go wrong with it. If you're into the genre, or if you're just kind of looking for a lighthearted and humorous kind of quasi 4X, I guess 5X is the way they call it, where you're playing evil overlord just to kind of kill some time without too much of an investment, then this one is definitely worth a look. But until then, I will see you next time. Hey, thank you very, very much for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, consider giving it a like, and if you disliked it, then by all means, give it a thumbs down. I've put a couple links up to some of my other work. If you're inclined to check it out, please do so. And subscribe if you would like to keep in touch with all the new stuff I roll out. But until then, thank you very, very much once again for watching, and have a good one.